Witness Me by Humble Narrator, Chapter 13. We be demons, we be half-lives, we be immortals. On this day, during the last days of Earth, where there existed a need and concept of time itself, was born a boy, a baby boy, very ill and very frail, but not without a fighting chance. With this child was his parents, a mother with long red hair and a father with wild medium-length spiky hair, as they were talking to the three organic mechanics that shaped the world then and now. Dr. Jiraiya, I can't even begin to thank you, said the father. Minito, I can't possibly sleep knowing that I have a means to help your son, and I did nothing and let him die, said Jiraiya as he began to pull out a syringe with the letters TB9 written on the side. Meanwhile, we see two doctors watching the whole ordeal. One was Orochimaru before he was afflicted with the scars given to him by Itachi, and the other was the age deception that was Tsunade. And this is a waste of valuable resource, sneered Orochimaru as he saw Jiraiya injecting the contents into the baby. We put it to a vote and you lost, so get over it already, said Tsunade as she pulled out a flask from her lab coat and proceeded to drink its contents. My dear Tsunade, so smart and so talented and yet so naive, said Orochimaru as Tsunade began to wipe her lips. What's your point? Asked Tsunade as she could care less what Orochimaru had to say. You realized, as being the three best-known doctors of our time, have perfected a syringe to cure anyone of any ailments and be immune to the horrid diseases such as radiation poisoning or wasting our greatest creation on some unimportant family's child, said Orochimaru. Hey, our greatest experiment isn't even guaranteed to do what it was intended for, so chill, said Tsunade. I know very damn well it works. Jiraiya knows it. You know it, cause everything we've made for this godforsaken planet has worked. Or do you need to look yourself in the mirror to be reminded of how you're an old biddy feigning to be a 20-year-old college student again? Said Orochimaru. So what if it does work? Said Tsunade. You do realize that was one of our only few remaining samples we got. What we got could make us immortals, fucking gods of the new world, and you guys chose to waste one on some nobody who'll get himself more times than he could count. Said Orochimaru. That's the thing. I have no interest in becoming a god. Nor does Jiraiya. So by all means, take your share of the samples and go back associate yourself with that arrogant bastard of the Uchiha family. Maybe in 100 or so years from now, when we're dead and they erect a monument for your contributions to mankind. That is if you choose not to become a god, said Tsunade. So be it. Fugaku has already offered me a more than generous arrangement for me. I suggest you take his offer before he offers you a life in nothing more than prostitution, said Orochimaru as he began to leave his friends behind just as Jiraiya left the room. Bumping into his friend and not so much as acknowledging him was more than enough to answer whatever question Jiraiya had. We should probably talk some sense into him, said Jiraiya. We should probably go our separate ways and never see each other again, said Tsunade as she began to make her leave. Wait, hold on now, Tsunade. You can't be serious, said Jiraiya as he stopped her in her tracks. I'm dead serious, cause if you haven't realized it yet, we're standing on a dying planet and it's already tearing the people of the world apart, so it's best if we never see each other in case some wise guy gets the idea to use and abuse us for their image of becoming a god, said Tsunade as she had already made arrangements for this day. Hold on a minute. Where do you plan to go? What do you plan to do? Asked Jiraiya. I'm going nowhere in particular. As for what I plan to do, I plan to save as many people till the day I die, said Tsunade. It really hurt Jiraiya that he had to say goodbye to his friends, more so Tsunade as she was the only woman whom he truly ever loved. But she never returned those feelings, and her words have more merit than anyone else. Hold on. If you plan to go, at least take these with you, said Jiraiya as he handed her the last injections of TB9 to Tsunade. Hey, they would be in safer and better hands with you, because something tells me that once this world of ours collapses, we'll be having an unlikely reunion, said Jiraiya. Won't have to happen if you remain quiet, said Tsunade, and risk letting the woman I love be targeted for the rest of her life by our ex-associate. Not gonna happen, said Jiraiya. You're a fool, you know, said Tsunade with a smile. We're all fools in love, said Jiraiya as he leaned in to kiss Tsunade for the last time, and the only time she'll allow it before saying goodbye forever. Walking back into his patient's room, Jiraiya was happy to see that the baby had made a full recovery and was sleeping at peace in his mother's arms. Doctor, thank you so much. Naruto may now have a chance to live his life, said the mother. No need to thank me, Kushina. It's the least I can do for my student's wife and son, said Jiraiya. So the question remains, what will you be doing now? Asked Jiraiya. Once Kushina is feeling better, we're gonna grab our things and head on east towards the mountains, said Minato. Sounds good. Be safe on your travels, said Jiraiya as he slipped out of the room to let them have their moments as family forever, how long that is. Years later. It's been a few years since that eventful day, and Naruto could say he's lived a rather innocent life up until now. Sure, his mom is dead, but he has his dad who keeps him safe and always has time for him, even when he has to go out hunting for food. But thankfully, they now found themselves a place they could call home. It wasn't much, but it provided a roof over their heads. There was enough metal and wood for his dad to make things. Plus, it was nice to not having to sleep in the back seat of the car. However, that all came to an end one day when Naruto was playing inside their home with some toys his father managed to find for Naruto to amuse himself. He heard some voices he's never heard before, and curiosity got the better of him when he wanted to see who was talking to his dad. They were nothing but a small group of vandals, pushing his father around, threatening him his life if he didn't give them what they wanted. Now, at this point, Naruto was no stranger for being in situations like this, and many times his father had told him to keep himself hidden and wait until he heard his father's voice. Unfortunately, his luck with this tactic came to an end when he tried to act stealth-like and wound up tripping over an empty can. This got the Vandals' attention with them beating Minato to the ground and then them hunting Naruto. They found him eventually and had tossed him next to his father as his condition inside scared the boy. All right, old man, tell us where you're keeping your shit and we can get on with our lives, said one of the Vandals as Minato looked at the man and then how scared his son is as the man had no choice but to concede. In the back, there's a green oil drum filled to the brim with gasoline, and in the trunk of that rusty old orange car are about enough food to last you guys for 2 weeks, said Minato. What about water? Asked the Vandal. I've got a hidden stash under the flooring. Just keep your ears open for it, said Minato, much to the Vandal's satisfaction. I've told you what you wanted to know. Now let us go, said Minato. Oh, you're free to go, all right. You and your bow, said the Vandal before he pointed his shotgun on Minato and shot him dead in front of Naruto. Daddy! Cried Naruto in horror as he tried to wake his father up, but got no response as he continued to bleed and lay there motionless. Don't worry, Junior. In a moment you'll be joining your daddy, said the Vandal as he began to aim his barrel over Naruto's head. I know from where you're sitting, I'm just some sadistic monster who kills kids and their families, but from where I am standing, I'm giving you an act of mercy where there's no need for you to struggle to survive and wound up dying out of starvation or getting mauled by whatever lurks out there, said the Vandal before finally pulling the trigger and popped Naruto's head like a water balloon. Hours later, Naruto would wake up fully healed but confused as to why, but would never know the answer so long as he would live. At the moment, due to his childhood naiveness and innocence, he remained by his father's side, hoping he'd spring up back to life like him, and would deny himself the reality no matter how bad his rotting corpse started to smell out in the open. And like the Vandal said, whatever remained out there will come and kill him, as several feral dogs smelled Minato's body and were desperately hungry, not caring if they had to maul Naruto to death. After his second encounter with death and the remains of his father, but now merely discarded chunks of meat and clothing, Naruto came to the realization that his life was a living hell as he felt alone, helpless, and no matter what sort of afflictions might come his way, he'll never die. Present day. For many years, Naruto would die more times than he could count, and while he'd eventually learn how to defend himself and would even find small societies for him to integrate with, or even a small time, he'd never stuck around for too long. Reason because he feels he's the harbinger of death itself, and every society he's attempted to stay with would eventually collapse, be it from raider gangs or internal struggles. All he knew was that blood was always spilled, and he'd be covered in it as the sole survivor. Still, he needed to learn how to associate himself with these societies because they tended to provide him with things he needed if he wanted to survive, like food, water, weapons, and every skill that he lacked in order to live on his own. Now, in the first time since he learned of his powers, someone else was present enough to know it too, and it left him with a pit in his stomach, a feeling of uncertainty, because as much as he views his condition as nothing more than a curse, to others they saw it as a means to become a god, as if the world had any need for them. Right now, he and Yang had set up camp as they continue their journey west in hopes to find her sister, a crusade that had nothing to do with Naruto, and yet he was committed to see how things would end. While he leaned against the car eating a can of dog food, Yang had continued to sharpen the blade of her brand new kukri left to them by Kabuto, while occasionally robbed glasses of Naruto. At this point, there was definitely a trust issue, be it how he had withheld a big secret like this from her, how he claims to have no idea why he's like this, and if he did, where the others like him, and if so, where are they now? All these questions, and with no answers, will be the ultimate test between their friendship. And that is if there's one by the end of the day. End of chapter 13. Witness Me by humble narrator. Chapter 14. A cruel welcome mirage. If society could sustain itself a little longer, man would be able to read and write for the purpose of erecting warning signs and planting at any to all major settlements. Granted, the few who do have better use of their valued skills, and instead of leaving the premonition welcome sign to those who enter the wastelands, as it be far wild than those who dare travel across the frontier throughout history. But this is a thought that never crosses one's mind when crossing these lands. What does come across a man's train of thought? Are the dangers that dwell these lands? How big are these abominations? How many mutants are present in one place? And if I'm to die here, would anyone bear to witness me? Right now, though, Naruto and Yang were thinking about how will they overcome their current adversary, as it took on the form of a man who had been covered head to toe in its own hair and had been used to hive in louse of the size of the man's fist as they swarmed their way to the duo. "Bite the dust!" shouted Naruto as he stomped at the ones that creeped their way towards them, while swinging his hatchet with a backhammer to those that hopped their way up in his torso. "Naruto, keep them busy. I'm gonna clear us a path right now," said Yang as she lit herself a petrol bomb made of glass and rag before tossing it underhand as the hairy mutant screeched in pain while the farm-raised louse buried themselves into the ground. "Yang, we should really make a run for it. We're gonna get ourselves killed here if we continue to stay," said Naruto as he went to reach for her, but she in turn pointed her shotgun at him. What matter does it mean to you, whether you die or not, since death is a luxury you can afford?" said Yang. "But not for you, and you certainly can't be chasing in your death wish today, not if you plan to reunite with your family," said Naruto. "I've already traveled far and wide, combing out the West, even its more taboo locations, searching for my family by myself. Now, if you want to leave, by all means consider our partnership over," said Yang as she continued to march her way towards the mutant-infected wasteland. Like she had said, Naruto was free to leave her, but he chose to stay around as he'd rather witness hope back in his eyes, even though the sight of what was as rare as finding an oasis filled with life and free from wasteland even for a day. Trekking the old roads to where life used to be was definitely the picture definition of situational irony, as now everything hidden in all these business establishments, office buildings, and everything else in between were mutants or residents refusing to help outsiders. Still, they continued on with their guns at hand, unaware they were going up against one of the worst beings born in this new world. "Hey Yang, we should definitely turn back now," said Naruto. "I told you I'm not turning tail," said Yang before Naruto pulled her back, where he was greeted by the butt of her shotgun to his stomach, where Naruto fell back and saw the barrel being pointed back in his face. If you're going to insist on holding me back, then I will kill you here, said Yang. Can you just listen to me and stay quiet and listen? Exclaimed Naruto as he and Yang stayed in place for a solid minute and heard nothing, smelled nothing, and just felt nothing involving life itself. Yeah, nothing, right? Something's not right here. We need to retreat back for now, or at least into one of those buildings and get to higher ground, said Naruto. I think we're too late for that, said Yang as she spotted another mutant in front of her as she raised her shotgun towards their latest adversary. It lacked any distinct genitalia as it had bare red blistered skin. Its lower jaw had sprouted two fangs that must have caused its upper lips to be ripped off as its mouth continued to bleed, and its hands was but one single appendage with a large sharp blood-soaked nail. Getting back on his feet, Naruto instead opted to pull out the revolver Yang had him carried as they both aimed their sights and watched the abomination upchuck a huge mass of flesh bathed in blood before it looked at the blonde duo. Call, clucked the critter as it began to crawl its way towards them, ready to tear them apart. But before anyone could start attacking, the mutant was suddenly crushed into the ground by a giant rock. What the hell was that? Asked Naruto as Yang visibly began to pale a little. Oh no, said Yang as there was a small quake to the ground as if something was stomping their way towards them. Coming into sight at 20 feet tall, made up of mainly muscle with gray skin, wearing the front of a semi-truck as a codpiece, and holding a barbed club made up of an old light post, fence yard, and a wooden stump, was the only known mutant to be nomadic that everyone feared. Oh shit, not this thing again, said Yang as Naruto grabbed her hand and began running in the opposite direction. What the hell is that thing? Asked Naruto. That's Brobdingnagion. We've only had a few runs in while I was still traveling with my mother, and each time we did, we were always wiped out, exclaimed Yang as the mutant began to throw large mounds of rock at them, one of which nearly crushed them. How do we stop that thing? Asked Naruto. We can't. Our best option right now is to run, exclaimed Yang as they continued to run to where they had left their car, only to see it be crushed before their very eyes. Quick, inside that building over there, said Yang as they ran into an abandoned hardware store with the Brobdingnagion still hot on the trail. Shit, we're sitting ducks here, said Yang angrily as Naruto rested his hand on his knees as he began to catch his breath. Maybe we got that thing off our trail, said Naruto. No, those things are tenacious. Right now, our fate is looking like either let it crush us to death out there or let it crush and bury us in here, said Yang. Maybe not, said Naruto as he spotted a propane tank and a box of large nails and adhesive material. What are you doing? Asked Yang. I've traveled the wasteland to see settlements and raiders using these things as improvised bombs and whatnot. I figured we'd give it a go, said Naruto as he tried to get to work, but stopped when Yang put her foot on it. Look closely at the nozzle. That thing is cracked and probably hasn't had any fuel to burn in years, said Yang as Naruto looked closer to see she was right. Shit. Now what? Jeered Naruto as he saw Yang pulled out the rest of the gasoline she had stored on her body before stuffing it with nails. With this, we can not only guarantee a fiery explosion, but watch the thing cry in pain as burning metal pierces its skin, said Yang. Okay, I can work with that, said Naruto. Problem is getting this thing in the right position and making sure we get a clear shot. So the question remains, who wants to be the one to distract that thing out there? Said Yang. Before they could Rochambeau the suicide job for their survival, the roof was suddenly torn off thanks to the behemoth outside swinging their club like it was a damn crowbar. Grabbing the gas can, Naruto ran out the building and started shooting at the Brobdingnagion as the bullets did nothing as it bounced off of his flesh. With its attention focused on Naruto, the Brobdingnagion lifted its leg high enough to stomp on the ground, causing the floor to quake, resulting in Naruto tripping forward and dropping the gas can. Damn it, Naruto jeered Naruto as he quickly rolled out of the way of getting crushed by the mutant's weapon before hopping back on his feet and started shooting at it once more. Seeing how Naruto was doing a good job in leading the Brobdingnagion away from her, Yang chose now to come out of hiding and keep her eyes focused on the gas can Naruto dropped. Spotting the familiar red canister, Yang was almost hesitant to shoot at it as it was right in between the mutants, Fatfoot, and Naruto. "Yang, take the shot!" shouted Naruto as his gun started to click the more he pulled the trigger, as the Brobdingnagian was ready to smash him into the floor like a damn bug, brushing off any guilt she would feel, knowing he'll walk it off. Yang fired her shotgun at the gas canister as a fiery explosion. Shrapnel went and tore through the mutant's lower leg and foot as Naruto had his face and chest filled with flaming out nails before collapsing to his knees. "Did we get it?" huffed Naruto with a weak smile as the Brobdingnagian answered his question when he punted Naruto across the street, where he crashed into the side of an abandoned truck where he lay there out for the count. "Oh no," said Yang worriedly as the monster was now injured, but was nowhere near close from dying, as it looked down at Yang with rage. Slamming its club as hard as he could, the Brobdingnagian had missed then buried its club into the asphalt as Yang took this as her cue to run away as far and as fast as she could. Still, she couldn't be able to answer from the grasp. She couldn't be able to escape from the grasp of the Brobdingnagian as it stomped its way towards Yang, even with an injured leg, before it finally reached and grabbed Yang in its giant hands. Having her where it wants her, the Brobdingnagian began to squeeze Yang with both its hands as Yang struggled to break free as she screamed in pain. "No, this can't be the end. I need to find Ruby. I need to find Summer. I need to be with my family again," thought Yang as she can feel her lower body breaking in places she never knew it could break. Across the building, blanketed by a tarp made of blood, was none other than Ruby, who came out of the hiding the moment she heard the explosion. While she should by all means go back and hide from the still living Brobdingnagian that still roamed the streets, something about seeing Yang had compelled her to help her. With her rifle set up and being loaded with one of her 2 remaining explosive round shells, Ruby pulled the trigger and watched as the left eye of the Brobdingnagian imploded as blood ruptured from it. Dropping its hold on Yang, the creature cried in pain as it gripped its eye and stomped around before storming out of the abandoned street. Seeing as things were calm for now, Ruby rushed downstairs to check on Yang, who laid on the hot burning road as she was breathing heavily. Not being one with medical knowledge, Ruby could assume the worst for Yang, as she couldn't move her right leg while the left one was shaking. "Do you want me to spare you from your suffering?" asked Ruby as she stepped within Yang's sight as she began to look at Ruby in a way that creeped the redhead out. "Summer, I finally found you," said Yang as her breathing was starting to slow down. "Summer, wait, how do you know my mom?" asked Ruby as she was ready to kill the stranger up until she dropped her mother's name. "Mom, so that means you're..." gasped Yang as her eyes began to fall heavy. "Hey, don't die on me, not until you tell me how you know my mom!" exclaimed Ruby, as it didn't matter how, since Yang had passed out from the beating she took. Bending down to pick up her sister, Ruby began to drag Yang back to her hole in the wall and pray that she comes to within the next 24 hours before making a mental note to go back and dispose of Naruto's body. Speaking of, the blonde drifter of the wasteland was starting to heal from his injuries a little as the nails slowly fell out his body, as the burn marks had also begun to fade. Lifting his head, Naruto could barely see someone dragging Yang away before a cloaked figure stepped in his view. Unable to do anything, Naruto passed out as someone new had opted to abduct his body for whatever reasons, as he allowed the fact that his and Yang's fate may finally come to an end right here at this moment. End of chapter 14.